Adarlan's assassin slips into the night to hunt her prey, successfully avenging Princess Nehemia's death by murdering Grave, a fellow assassin she competed against to become King's champion. Celaena presents Grave's head to the king and Minister Molson, who is ultimately responsible for hiring Grave to assassinate Nehemia. The assassin presents a list of traitors to the king before checking on Archer and warning him to leave Rifthold or face the consequences. Finally, Celaena visits her friend's burial site to honor her with a funeral song, the likes of which leads Chaol to suspect Celaena's heritage. In a last act of friendship, Celaena packs away Nehemia's belongings to be collected, only to discover what the princess knew and was hiding from Celaena, which leads the assassin to solving the riddle in Queen Elena's tomb. While Dorian and Celaena try to make amends, Chaol hunts down clues to Celaena's past in the library.
Hey there, we're BookTok for BookTok with Jack and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously. This is Jack.
And I'm Amy, and we embrace and respect modern fantasy, romance, and romantasy books written by women. And so it's in our nature to analyze these books as we would any other novel we might have dissected in school.
With our combined 13 years of literary academic training, we use our education to analyze and give voice to reasons why you may love or hate today's popular books.
This week, we're discussing chapters 35 through 38 of Sarah J. Maas's second Throne of Glass novel, Crown of Midnight. For a complete list of episodes and chapter breakdowns, be sure to check out our Instagram at the handle BookTok for BookTok.
Before we dive in, let's talk about S.P.I.L.T, spoilers, perspective, interpretation, language, and themes.
Spoilers. While our discussion is about Crown of Midnight, important context from the first 3 novels in the series will be discussed without spoiler warnings. That is specifically Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Heir of Fire. This is not a read-along for anyone who hasn't read at least these 3 books, and you will be spoiled from here on out. So please take this as your only spoiler warning. For all other spoilers beyond Heir of Fire and other SJM works, we will keep those to the Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks area at the end of the episode.
Perspective and interpretation. What we discuss in this episode are strictly our personal interpretation of the text. We do not speak for Sarah J. Maas and in no way know her intentions for her books or characters. We also know our listeners have their own personal views and opinions, and we encourage you to share your thoughts with us because every perspective and interpretation is worth exploring, and I'm particularly excited about that this episode.
I know, she's been keeping me in suspense. Language. Even though we say we try to not swear, we do swear a lot.
Yeah.
Explicit language does occur. You've been warned.
Buckle the fuck up. Themes. We also discuss some pretty heavy subjects throughout the podcast that can include themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death. While we will do our best to give trigger warnings for the darker themes, we will discuss these topics when they are important to the text. Listener discretion is advised.
As always, we love keeping the conversation going because our listeners are so good at finding things we've overlooked or missed completely. You can share your interpretation of the text with us by posting on social media, tagging us in your stories, sending us DMs, or submitting to the form on our website. We also post more exclusive content and host live streams for our Patreon supporters. You can find us at patreon.com/BookTok for BookTok. This week, we ask ourselves the question, are Celaena's actions in these chapters the stages of grief playing out? If so, are they bringing her closer toward acceptance?
We all know that stage of grief, of murder.
Murder. I feel it often.
Yeah, you're not even grieving.
I'm grieving the loss of my free time.
Yeah, that's fair. Themes we see in this section include foreshadowing and moonlight, as well as stages of grief. Now, before we go into this episode, one thing we asked listeners was, hey, if you do not like Chaol, give us a thought out example. Like, don't just say, I don't like Chaol or something. And also, we encourage people to use our words against us. Like, look at the text, tell us what it is about Chaol you do not like. This listener wrote a dissertation. So this is long, but I feel like it's very critical as to this episode. And Amy, I can't wait for you to hear. And you guys, listeners, you too. This is from Emily. Please enjoy my argument for my general frustration about Chaol. Sorry, it's a long one. Chaol Westfall as a mirror of a modern patriarchal loyalty. She titles this. Like she titles each like this is her essay. And then here's the thesis. Chaol is introduced as a character defined by moral integrity, loyalty, and empathy. He cares deeply for those around him and offers a stabilizing presence in Celaena Sardathian's turbulent life. However, Chaol's loyalty does not lie solely with individuals, but with structures, norms, and systems that afford him security and status. In this way, he becomes a literary symbol of men in modern society who may sympathize with the oppressed, yet ultimately prioritize preserving the system that protect their own comfort and privilege. Right there, I was like, done. You did it. Like, you won me, babe.
And it's so funny. I was just listening to the edit for episode 4, and you call him out for his white privilege.
Yeah, but, I could have done it more. And so she has 4 points before the conclusion.
Okay.
And then the afterthought. Again, this is long, but I think well worth it. And this is what we asked for, right? Is to give us people's thoughts. So the first one, the good guy, the quote unquote good guy with hidden loyalties. Chaol represents the archetype of the so-called quote unquote good guy. He has no malicious intentions. He does not exploit others for personal gain, and he genuinely cares about the people in his life, Dorian, Nehemia, and Celaena. Yet, Crown of Midnight reveals that his deepest loyalties is not to justice, but to stability and hierarchy, particularly to the king who embodies power. Quote, I don't want you to know the truth, not if it means losing you. She's even citing the text, like, fucking God, Emily. Great. This line becomes emblematic of how quote-unquote good men often choose ignorance or denial when the truth threatens this worldview. What drives Chaol is not cruelty, but a desire to preserve order and thus his own place within it.
I already have no arguments against this.
No, I'm like, do we go and redo the last season and a half? Because like, holy shit.
Nope, keep going.
I can't wait for future seasons. And I'm going to take everything Emily said. Something similar happened, I feel like, in ACOTAR or in Akamov, where someone made a good point. And I was like, yeah, you're fucking right. I'm sticking with it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like Gabriel talking about Lucian. It's just like, okay.
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
This is true. Yeah. All right, point 2. Chaol feels empathy for Nehemia, understanding the king's tyranny and sees Celaena suffering and Dorian's doubt. He even acknowledges that the rebellion has valid roots, yet he does nothing to change it. He reflects the type of man in politics, corporate life, or everyday society who expresses sympathy for marginalized groups but refuses to act in ways that would threaten his own position in the hierarchy. Chaol wants justice as long as it doesn't cost him his safety. Yeah, girl, get it. Point 3, titled Idolizing a Safe Version of Womanhood. Oh, I have like a literary boner right now. Like, okay. Chaol's love for Celaena is real, but conditional. He wants her to be beautiful, strong, and a little broken, but not too powerful. He wants to love her, but only the version of her that fits into his worldview. When he learns who she is, he pulls away. He cannot bring himself to love a woman who is greater, more dangerous, and more powerful than himself. He reflects how men in society may admire quote-unquote strong women as long as they remain non-threatening, agreeable, and within limits. Quote, you cannot pick and choose what parts of her to love. I feel like that's a future quote, but it's fair. It's valid. It's as if she's speaking to every man who claims to love women, but only certain sanitized versions of them. Point number 4, titled The Archetype of the Comfortable Passive Ally. Chaol represents the kind of man who means well but is unwilling to risk anything to enact change. He supports equality in theory but refrains from challenging injustices in practice. He sees the harm done by the king. He knows how he suppresses magic, kills innocent people, and manipulates power, but Chaol remains loyal because the system gives him a safe, predictable role to play. Conclusion. A modern patriarch in a fantasy cloak. Chaol is not a villain. He is a complex human and vulnerable, but that is precisely why he becomes such a powerful literary reflection of how patriarchal systems are not upheld solely through malice, but through fear, loyalty, and comfort. Men like Chaol are everywhere. They praise strong women, express empathy for the oppressed, and claim to want justice. But when the chaos is between solidarity and stability, they choose stability and, in doing so, reinforce the patriarchy. Celaena must defend the king, but to truly find herself, she must liberate herself from men who love her, but do not fully accept her. Afterthoughts. Now, I'm not going to read this because it's in Queen of Shadow, so I'll, again, she kept, dear God, she kept like the breadcrumbs. I'll save that for later. And then finally, Chaol only likes Celaena when she is the king's champion and is in the point of also being willing to conform to the system. When she starts moving out of this is when they start getting in conflict. Slow clap. Emily.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. And you know what hurts the most is the fact that not only do I see it in people around me, I see Chaol Westfall in myself and the comfort I have with the positions of privilege that I enjoy in my life. And it's a harsh reminder that empathy without solidarity is pointless.
Yeah. I mean, throughout the season, I keep talking about social responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like I started having the thought, but never made that bridge. So thank you, Emily. I wanted to read that because we see a shift in Chaol in this episode. And from here on out, I am taking Emily's lens.
Yeah.
This has genuinely shifted my mind so much that that's now how I'm interpreting Chaol from here on out. Like, great job.
I think I do not disagree with anything Emily has said. I think for Crown of Midnight, I'm going to throw Chaol a bone because he has to do 22 years of conditioning.
Yeah.
And 22 years of being in a system that benefits him. And that's not easy and requires a lot of self-awareness. And Chaol is not at that point. Now, when we get to future books and he persists this way, he gets no sympathy from me.
Yeah, I think some of the points that we made, and another listener was like, hey, here are some things I don't necessarily agree with of how we say that he's the only one who trusts, my lipstick fell, that he's the only one who we feel like gets a Celaena, that no one's actually there for her except for Chaol. I still think that some of those moments are true in moments where we talked about them. In episodes like today and going forward, not so much. However, like you said, he has years of conditioning he has to break through, and no one's challenging him on that yet. Like, that's not, like, no one's sitting here. Nehemia is challenging Celaena, but no one's really challenging Chaol on being better. And like you said, when he does become challenged and when he pushes that and he doesn't live up to it, rise to the challenge is when you're like, Chaol, the fuck?
I think what I will say is, the moments when we've said Celaena is falling for Chaol because he's the one who understands her the best. I think we also have to understand, we're limited to Chaol and Celaena's points of view of each other. And so in Celaena's mind, Chaol is the one who understands her best or who has understood her the most because she's probably revealed the most of herself up until that point. That doesn't mean it's actually true. So
I mean, and she's similar to him. She's not rising up to the challenge right now. She's comfortable in where she's at. Like, she's not, Nehemia keeps saying, hey, like, what are you going to do? Still keep being the king's champion. And that's the game plan until she can get free. So, she does understand Chaol. Chaol understands her. They are both complacent. They have the sympathy, but they're not rising to meet that.
Yeah.
So just a great place to start the episode, and let's go forward. The chapter starts, and we are no longer dealing with the Celaena we have ever known. We are truly getting a new side of her. We are getting the assassin. Quote, there would be no candles for these midnight deeds, no ivory horn to signal the start of this hunt. Moonlight is completely gone. There is nothing good here. There's nothing truthful and honest. We are in the dark because, not even a single, she doesn't even want candles. She doesn't even want anything going on. And you're going to keep hearing me call out points of Moonlight because there are, I feel like, a lot of references of Moonlight in particular in these chapters.
Yeah, there certainly are. And I'm going to leave those to Jack. What I want to start by acknowledging in this first sentence are the visuals. There are a lot of important visuals that are going to happen. And the sole purpose of them is juxtaposition. We are seeing the juxtaposition of who Celaena is mentally right now compared to who she was at the start of Crown of Midnight. This is a darker parallel of the Celaena that we know. This is someone completely different who's been driven toward the edge. And we get a sense of that, right? Where she was angelic innocence earlier in the book, often dressed in white. We now see no ivory horn, no light. All of that is completely covered in darkness.
Yep. I mean, to your point of how she's dressed, everything about her is ready to kill, even to her outfit. She's completely removing herself from her own identity because she's wearing that mask. She is ready to go. And she's stripping away her identity of the feminine completely, right? She is now a weapon. And we know, like, when I say like the identity of the feminine, like, we know she loves dresses. Like, this isn't her. I'm not saying that women can't be assassins, equal opportunity here, but this is a side of her that she's always found comfort in. And you can see the more she embraces that, the more comfortable she is in her skin and her environment. So she is stripping that completely away. And we're going to see her continue to strip that away later this episode. And not only is Celaena different, and we, the reader, know that she's different, even Fleetfoot is not into this version of Celaena. Quote, Celaena locked her bedroom and spared a glance at Fleetfoot, who cowered under the bed as she hauled open the secret door. The dog was still quietly whining as Celaena strode into the passage. Fleetfoot has always represented Celaena in a way. We've always talked about that. I would like to think that Fleetfoot is the good in Celaena. And the fact that, she's hiding underneath the bed, she's scared of what's about to happen, of her getting ready to go and torture. I think that's a really big clue for how significantly bad it is of an act that she's about to do.
I think that's a great point. And I think that, again, is another visual reminder that this is not the Celaena we're accustomed to. That Celaena has been locked inside and is meant to cower. And that's because Adarlan's assassin is in predator mode, and Fleetfoot knows it. Celena's inside good person knows it, and they are cowering. Another visual reminder of what's going on, quote, this was not the sort of hunt that began at the front door. Now, this visual makes me think of how battle was done, like in the Civil War in the United States or in 1776, where it's all like organized lines and they march together. Like it was civilized.
I was like, this is such a specific time frame of in America in 1770.
I think of it only because of the videos I've watched, historical fiction videos about those times, and how everyone's in straight lines and on the command, both groups come at each other and then they point and they shoot or whatever the case is. It's very proper, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and doesn't seem like the best method.
It's not strategically cunning.
I mean, who are we to know?
Well, that's why. Okay, I'm not going to get into history right now. I'm going to close that part of my brain. The point I'm trying to make is that using the front door, meeting your foe on the battlefield in a civilized manner with a proper warning, is the honorable thing to do. And that is Chaol. Chaol is the honorable, civilized one. Celaena is in no mood to be proper or honorable. She is going to use any means necessary to get her way.
This is not an honor kill.
No, not at all.
No, this is a torture. We posted a question to our listeners, which we'll read at the very end, and their answers are very interesting to me. But I mean, we are set, regardless of whether we, the reader, might feel like it's justified because he killed Nehemia. The reading the text is setting us up to feel very uncomfortable and that this is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Celaena needs weapons. So what does she do? She decides to go raid the tomb, which is so violating. And it's starting to remove the good, right? Because you're like, you don't take the dead people's jewels. Like she's even taking the jewels, and we know she's going to use those jewels to buy off Graves' location.
Mm-hmm.
But she's going into the tomb, and in particular, we have this quote, moonlight spilled onto the landing, illuminating the open door of the tomb and Mort's little bronze face. Moonlight is spilling into the floor. It's like trying to cleanse her. It's trying to bring the good in her. And I think that it's actually going to be a great counterbalance to Celaena's actual acts, like here she is committing this not great situation, raiding the tomb while she's in this pure moonlight. Celaena straight up raids the weapons and the jewels, quote, daggers, hunting knives. She took whatever she could strap onto her belt or tuck into her boots. She took a handful of gold and jewels and shoved that into a pocket too. It's very violating. It's stealing. Like those aren't hers to take. And she is taking it from the dead, from a place that has continued to be a very sacred place. At one point, Mort will even compare Elena to a god. And like this is almost a religious type of place. And she's just taking whatever the hell she wants. But that's very much her journey, right? And I think what's every single thing that I get, like, I'm like, damn, Celaena, you're going too far. I'm like, you know what, Elena? Elena asked for this. Elena wanted it. So I hope you're happy, Elena. Take this shit from her. She deserves it.
I mean, one way to look at this is the presence of moonlight is actually Elena's blessing. Like, you know what? It's okay because this was always the plan. We needed you to break.
Yep. Yay, you're breaking.
Woo!
Then Celaena takes the big sword, but it's not Elena's sword that she takes. Quote, Celaena approached the stand that displayed Damaris, sword of Gavin, the first king of Adarlan. The hollowed-out golden pommel glinted in the moonlight as she pulled the scabbard from the stand and strapped it across her back. This feels so wrong because she's supposed to be doing Elena's bidding. She hasn't heard a word from Gavin. We don't know what the fuck he wants her to do. And yet she's using Gavin's sword, which feels wrong. I mean, we know Elena was a warrior. We know that she was capable. Granted, it's not like her weapons are out laying around. But once again, like the last time she went to go save Chaol, she took Chaol's sword, right? Now she's going to go kill Grave. She's taking Gavin's sword. It's just, none of it's hers. Like it's a man's sword that she's wielding.
Yeah, I wonder why this is the choice. Part of me thinks maybe it's connected to the fact that it was Adarlan's first king, and Grave ultimately, although he's going to be hired by somebody else, it's all connected back to the corruption of Adarlan. So it's appropriate for Adarlan's first king, the good king, to cut them all down. On the other hand, she's going to kill Grave to get the truth out of him. And Gavin always got the truth when he wielded the sword. So that's where my mind went.
And as a writing device, it's a good way for when Celaena puts two and two together later and was like, wait a minute, I need to use the sword. The sword that I just very conveniently used to kill someone.
Yep.
But it's one of those setup where it makes sense. Like she doesn't have any weapons. Of course she needs a sword. What's the only sword? Gavin's sword. Yep. Oh my God, the clue leads her to Gavin. Like that's actually a very good writing setup moment.
Yeah, it is. Now, Mort, like Jack, is not very happy about this situation. Quote, that is a sacred sword, Mort hissed. Wherever you are going, whatever you plan to do, you debase that sword by taking it from here. Aren't you afraid of angering the gods? Celaena just laughed quietly before she took the stairs. Celaena is so far gone that even the act of debasing a sacred object and risking the anger of the gods does not give her pause. That is how far she has fallen. The fact that she laughs at Mort's comment also suggests, I think, that she finds either joy or irony in the act of defiling the object. And it's almost like a fuck you to the gods. She's
Yeah.
baiting the gods. The gods have never favored her. They've
Yeah.
never been on her side. So what does she care?
Yep.
And I don't blame her.
No, not at all. I love the way that this chapter is written. I love just the way that SJM describes things. I love that every action, every scene is kind of broken up into different beats. There's a pause in between each of these moments.
Mm-hmm.
And now we are with Celaena while she's leaving the castle, and she's leaving in the only way she knows how. Quote, "She relished the burn in her arms as she hauled the sewer gate up, rotating the ancient wheel until it was fully raised, dripping with filth, and the water beneath the castle flowed freely into the small river outside." We are making it very clear that this is not a cleansing water. This is not a good act that she's about to do. She is about to leave with the filth to go commit this act. There is nothing baptismal about this, and
Mm-hmm.
there is only bad in her actions here. The night is really a throwback of when she went to go save Chaol / Nehemia. Quote, "Sewage and puddles, excrement lay beneath every window of the slums, and the cobbled streets were cracked and misshapen after many hard winters. The buildings leaned against each other, some so ramshackle that even the poorest citizen had abandoned them. On most streets, the taverns overflowed with drunks and whores, and everyone else who sought temporary relief from their miserable lives." So it's very similar to how it's described when she goes to Chaol, but it just feels so much more harsh now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it feels like these whores and these pathetic assholes in these slums, and you're all miserable, and I hate you all. Like, I think there's a lot of undertones happening here, but I think part of that is because Celaena is now part of this environment. She is now one with the slums. She got here because she literally escaped with the filth, with the crap, and she is the slum, and she, I think, hates herself as much as she hates what she's seen.
I think that's exactly right. To your point, we've already seen the slums thanks to when Celaena went to go save Chaol. We don't necessarily need the second description, but what it does, what SJM achieves in providing this description, is it reflects how Celaena is feeling, how she thinks of herself, and it is not a pretty picture.
Mm-mm.
Talk about self-loathing.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get better.
Woo! So many books of self-loathing. For the first time, we're really seeing the assassin. Quote, "Once she found out where Grave was hiding, she turned his skin inside out. Worse than that, actually." Celaena's made very similar threats in Throne of Glass and in this book, Crown of Midnight. And each time she's made threats like this, it's always kind of been a little bit of an eye roll to me where it's like, okay, sure you are, Celaena. Especially like if you think back to Throne of Glass, she was chained and starved and emaciated and was like, "I am going to kill all of these guards." And it's like, no, you're not. This is the first time that she's making a threat and going to follow up on that.
Yeah. And she finally has the strength and ability to do so again.
Yep.
Now, Celaena goes to a place we've never seen her go before, but we understand she has frequented before in Dovier. Quote, "In the subterranean warren below, one could find the cutthroats, the monsters, the damned of Adarlan." Symbolically, this was a significant moment. Celaena, since coming back from Endovier, has been in the palace, has been high up, away from the slums, away from this subterranean warren. And now she's descended to be among them again. She is re-assimilating. She is just as damned as the rest of them. Later, she will think, quote, "What she planned to do tonight already broke enough rules, crossed too many lines." And I have to ask myself, whose rules, what lines?
Mm-hmm.
And those rules and lines are of the good, right? They're on the side of good, of light, of purity, all the things that she is not right now.
Yep.
Now, there is this one section, and I agree with Jack. This chapter, this set of chapters has to be among my favorite set of chapters so far in the series. I think SJM's really starting to hit her stride, but I do wonder if we still have an area here that isn't quite earned because I don't know how she came up with this information. And maybe for the sake of pacing, as the author, SJM just had to put it in there. Quote, Grave had undoubtedly received a large fee for his services and could be counted on to now be recklessly spending his blood money, a spree that would not go unnoticed. He wouldn't have left Rifthold. Oh no. He wanted people to know he killed the princess. He wanted to hear himself named the new Adarlan's assassin. He wanted Celaena to know too. And she's not wrong. We understand that when we switch over to Grave's point of view.
But how do you know?
But are we convinced? Yeah, are we convinced Celaena knows that about Grave?
I mean,
I don't know.
It's very much I think it's the fact that she doesn't even add I could guess, or I wouldn't be surprised if. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it feels like very much he is a shitty person. This is what a shitty person would do.
Yeah.
And it would have been beneficial to be like, men like him.
Yes. It's such a small change for her to add a little bit of Celaena back into the narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Celaena knew other assassins like Grave, or she knew from Grave's behavior, blah, 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 blah. He wanted all the,
Yeah.
There wasn't enough Celaena in that description. It felt like the author telling me what we needed to know.
I mean, and right now she's doing a detached Celaena perspective, right? Like this is Celaena, but she's very emotionally detached from all these things. You can still have an emotionally detached observation, but not make it that.
Yeah.
I agree. Now we switch over to Grave's point of view, and I love that. I love that we get over to his side of things, and we see him being stalked by Celaena. Quote, he turned to see her in the doorway as she called out his name, looking more wraith than human. Celaena's been compared to a wraith many times in this book, to the point where I'm almost thinking, were all those times lead up to this very moment where she truly is a wraith, where maybe those moments are hints of this assassin, cold-blooded person inside of her? All of that to lead up to this moment where Celaena goes from being death to causing death.
I think you're right, and we'll get into that again when Celaena goes to visit Nehemia's grave. Because right now, this is the most accurate use of Wraith so far. She's lost herself to the grief, and she'll murder because of it. She's literally haunting Grave, stalking him to kill him. What I think is also important for us to know, this is a great scene from Grave's point of view, but it's just cementing the disassociation that Celaena is experiencing right now. And I think as readers, it would be hard for us to empathize with Celaena if we were in her brain when she tortures Grave the way that she does. I think being too close to her narrative would have tainted our view of Celaena. And so SJM, I think, does a brave thing and a smart thing by switching to Grave's point of view.
I mean, especially, sorry, I just want to hop on that, especially with the way that Grave describes her, right? Like he keeps wanting to kill her. He keeps wanting to do horrible things to her, even though he's afraid. He calls her a bitch. Like we're in his perspective, and SJM is doubling down that this is not a good man. So even we keep talking about this, that every time Celaena is about to kill someone, there's always a sign of like, this isn't a good human. This is tenfold, right? Because now Celaena's about to torture, and we haven't seen her torture yet. And we have to really dig home that he is a shit person.
Yeah, exactly. That there is no remorse in him. And we're going to see that throughout the narrative, which I will describe. What I love about this, though, Celaena is not subtle. She wants to be seen coming. She's got 2 swords on her back. She's got daggers everywhere. She wants to be seen for the threat that she is. Quote, Grave had immediately taken note of the broadsword hovering over one of her shoulders and the assortment of gleaming, wicked-looking blades strapped to her hips. Meanwhile, Grave is completely ill-prepared with his 3 daggers. He's been waiting a week. He's convinced Celaena doesn't even know that he's the one who killed Nehemia. He thinks about how he should have left a calling card.
Yeah.
He's such a man.
Just to like, in case people are like, sometimes they're so hard on men. In case we're like, because I was about to be like, the audacity of men, this is such a man statement. And people might be like, that's not a man. Okay, I don't want to do the whole hashtag not every man. However, there is a thread that was viral this week, Amy. And it was men saying, do you think you could be a female professional MMA fighter? And every man said yes. Almost all the men said, easy, that I could take her out. No problem. That's not a real fight. Like men who have probably never been in a true fist fight. And even if they have, are nowhere near professional, think that they could very easily, to the point where they're like, oh, it'd be cruel to do it because of how much I could take her. Yeah. So when we say the complacency and the audacity of men, we're not coming up with this out of nowhere.
Yeah. Oh my God. That makes me so mad. As someone who has a friend who is a professional fighter.
You do?
From church. You've never met her.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah, she just went pro this week, I think.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she moves faster than 90% of the men who probably said, oh yeah, I can do it. No, you can't.
I didn't even go anywhere near professional when I did my when I was like 4 years MMA. And I knew then I could kick a lot of men's asses. And I was like not even strong or good. I mean, I was good, but not professional good. So it's just this 3 dagger bullshit. It's like, it is such a man move.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Grave is cocky, not only in his complacency, but in this bravado, this brave front he puts forward to mask his cowardly actions and his fear. It is only when Grave reaches a dead end in his escape route that he starts thinking of fighting back. Quote, he'd soon have her begging for mercy before he cut her into little pieces. Drawing one of his daggers, he smiled and turned to the open street behind him. Like, bullshit. Bullshit. You've been running away until now.
I know, right? Like suddenly it's like, I could take her as I'm pissing myself.
Later on, quote, Grave surveyed the buildings surrounding them. The stone was too slippery and there were no windows. One step at a time, she approached. He would really enjoy making her suffer as much as the princess had. Only after checking to make sure there are no windows and the stone is too slippery for him to climb. Okay, buddy. Yeah. Like, he's looking for an escape. He doesn't see one. So he's convincing himself he's going to destroy Celaena so that he isn't afraid of her.
Yeah.
He's not capable of acknowledging his own cowardice.
Yeah.
And doesn't think it consciously. We don't see it on the page in words, but we see it in his actions. And for me, it's a chef's kiss to SJM because it is so good.
It's so good. And for me, I feel like it's so believable.
Yeah.
There's this moment as Celaena closes in on Grave, quote, still she approached, and the sword at her back whined as she drew it. The moonlight glinted off the long blade, probably a gift from her princely lover. Now, this is all of Grave's perspective, and I like how he was like, it was a gift from her lover. But right now, it's showing that it's Elena, the moonlight, on here. And I kind of like what you're saying, that it's Elena supporting. Oh, I did write that too. It's Elena supporting these actions of her and just being like, yeah, bitch, spiral, go off. I want you to lose it. Be unhinged, you know?
Yeah.
Like the true mama goddess that she is.
Goddess, devil, who knows? What I like about the sword whining, it makes me think back on Fleetfoot, who is whining. And it feels like the two different sides of Celaena, right? The Fleetfoot, the good, the sword, the assassin.
Yeah. The whole scene is dramatic. This whole entire moment is full of drama, which I love. Quote, she stopped a few feet away and sheathed her sword. She drew a long jeweled dagger. He swore at her, the filthiest word he could think of. I love the ornateness of the jewelry because, she's one, it's almost like you can't take it seriously because of how pretty and bedazzled it is.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's almost like we were saying that she removed the feminine. And this is like leaning back into this. So it's kind of like this actually is her,
Mm-hmm.
there's this blingy prettiness that's happening that she's like, yep, that's me. I love it. And it's just, again, a counterbalance to him saying a really bad word to describe her,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is probably just cunt.
Yep. Yes.
I gave the hard T. Cunt. Cunt. Otherwise, we're Californians. We drop the T's.
It's true.
And we can't even say cunt correctly.
We can't.
Say it.
Cunt.
Oh, no, you added that T.
I did. I have emphasized. I didn't even draw it out, but I did make sure to say it.
Do you feel like twat is at the same degree of offensive?
No.
I don't either. My mom thinks it's jarring when I've said twat in front of her.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She was like, that's a bad word.
Maybe because my mom used it a lot.
All right, let's wrap up 35.
The last we get of Grave is a reminder of his cowardice. And I pointed out because of how the narrative is so good at conveying what we need to know about his character without spelling it out. It's just re-emphasizing my point from earlier. Quote, maybe he could feign innocence. He could talk his way out of this, convince this arrogant whore he had nothing to do with it. He has to put Celaena down.
And it always comes back to sexual, diminishing her through sex, saying her princely lover, calling her a whore. Men cannot insult women without bringing sex into it in one way or another.
It's true. It's true. And yet we're able to insult men so easily.
So creative. I can be a poet with my insults.
Now, as I mentioned, at the start of Graves' point of view, he lamented not leaving a calling card so Celaena would know it was him. And now he's like, I can convince her that I didn't do it. He's just so despicable. It's just so good.
It's great.
That, and to your point, Jack, from earlier, it's so that we don't regret Celaena killing him.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
SJM has convinced us that Grave deserves this.
And I don't disagree. But then the question's going to be a little bit later, just because Grave deserves it doesn't mean that her act was not immoral.
We'll get to that later.
Until then, everyone, let's take a sip. We are in chapter 36, and we are now in Dorian's perspective, and Celaena walks into the council room, and it is a mirror to the start of this book. Quote, the doors to his father's council room were thrown open, and Celaena prowled in, her dark cape billowing behind her. Very reminiscent to when Celaena came in at the start of the book, pretending to have killed the target that the king gave her. Only this time, it's a real murder. Yeah. And it's coming to fruition of what was supposed to be at the beginning of this book.
Yeah, and we see this all play out from Dorian's perspective. And so we're not necessarily understanding what Celaena's thinking at this point, like we did in chapter 2 when we first saw this. Right now, quote, Dorian could only stare at her. This was different from the feral creature she'd become the night Nehemia had died. What she was right now, the edge on which she was balancing, would help them all. Now, I think it's important that we see this from Dorian's point of view. Right now, we can't trust Chaol. We're going to see him begin to doubt Celaena. So we have to see Celaena at the edge of the precipice from Dorian's point of view. Now, at the start of the book, he did judge her for something she didn't do. But I think this is even different from that. I think now he understands maybe why she's done what she has done, but he sees the danger in that rather than judging her. And again, this is important because of the interaction Dorian and Celaena will have later in the library when Celaena is starting to come back to herself. There is something very special that's going to connect Dorian and Celaena. And I think for the first time, he can truly understand her.
Agreed. Especially at this point, Chaol has told him the truth about everything, including Celaena's pretending to kill
Mm-hmm.
people. So I think he kind of can come to this moment of gravity knowing A, Celaena has chosen to let people live when they're innocent. B, she was ready to kill Chaol. And C, Nehemia died and that's messed him up not just as much as Celaena, but has messed him up quite a bit.
Yeah.
Celaena and the king have this moment together, and it's meant to be super terrifying because it's just like, oh no, they get along. Quote, then Celaena and the King of Adarlan smiled at each other, and it was the most terrifying thing Dorian had ever seen. In a way, it's almost like what would have happened if Celaena was willing to do what the king wanted her to do. I mean, she could have turned evil very easily, you know? Like,
Mm-hmm.
she could have been saying, like, all right, well, you know, whatever, you conquered my nation, you know, lean into it. But it's also shows how Dorian understands how terrifying his father is, because it's almost like if Celaena is willing to stoop to this level, then that is terrifying. Or if they're both willing to work together, it is terrifying. There's a lot of things that are worth being scared of. Dorian, though, is absolutely sick of what he has seen. And it's not when the head shows up. It's not when the head rolls around. It's immediately after Celaena and his father smiling at one another. Quote, Dorian felt his gore rise, not just for the severed head and her blood-stiffened clothing, but also for the fact that he could not, for the life of him, find the girl he had loved anywhere in her face. And from Chaol's expression, he knew his friend felt the same. We've talked about it before where Dorian has identified Celaena as the girl he once loved. And it's a title. And it's a title of ownership, right? It's not like Celaena
Mm-hmm.
within her own identity. Like, it's, I don't recognize Celaena, the soul that I've gotten to know. I don't recognize the woman I loved. It's not an ownership. I'm not saying it's a claiming, but it is a layer of disconnect of who she is and how he viewed her. But I think he kind of gets it. Like, this is not who he thought he loved.
What I think we're seeing happen is we're seeing the male gaze being undone.
Ugh, love a good undoing of male gaze. Let's bring the trauma.
And, you know, Dorian for the first time, not for the first time, but it's really solidifying in his brain that maybe the Celaena he thought he knew wasn't the full picture or wasn't even the picture, right? And I think that's important because from now on, he will approach Celaena and other women with the intent of knowing them.
Yeah.
Instead of imagining what they are.
Oh, calm down there, Amy. That is some revolutionary thinking. All right. Slow down with that. If men find the recipe to that, they will rule the world that they already rule. Because this is the longest day that has ever happened, Celaena decides to go pay a visit to Archer, and she's still in her gross clothes. I would like to come back to this. She left through the sewers, through the poop water. Okay, she went through the poop water. She lifted up the gate and it said poop fell down. And then she went through the poop water. And then she went through the poopy sewer place of the town. And then she killed someone, got blood all over her. And then with his decapitated head, went back to the castles, decided to leave back into the city. So she's gross. Just, I want to emphasize that. Now let's look at this lovely quote. Quote, she would digest all that later, much later. She's talking about her clothes here. For now, she stared at Archer, then looked down at her blood-stiffened clothing. It's almost like it's dawning on her now where she's like, huh, I think I smell. And, you know, and also much, much worse. I think it's super interesting that Celaena is wearing the clothes that she is wearing when she killed Grave. I know I'm joking around about it, but I think it's part of the mourning process where you can't let something go. Killing Grave was a big moment for her in getting justice for Nehemia. So getting past that is just another thing to mark Nehemia's death. And now that that's done, that's another thing that's happened. just a little bit on the side of mourning. And if people don't know, and, hopefully you won't have to know for a very long time, but there's moments of mourning that people don't realize where you have the moment of death, right? And then you have when they are actually buried, and then you have getting rid of the things. But even things like if you move, and you have to sell the house, that's something my family had to go through this year with a death in the family. And once the house is sold, that's another part of mourning. And then once this other thing the other paperwork has finished, now that's another thing that's like, oh my God, this is putting me farther and farther away from the person I loved. And this is just like another one of those things where it was a to-do list and now it's done. And now it puts her farther away from Nehemia. So I think grief is captured very well here.
I think that's an excellent point. I didn't even think about it from that perspective. I thought about how Celaena doesn't even care to clean herself before she sees Archer because Archer doesn't deserve to see her clean.
And that too.
I think I think both are true.
Yeah.
And Archer is injured. She's disgusting. She could give him an infection. She does not care. She wants him gone. And you know what? He deserves that.
It's like, don't piss me off. I will touch your wound. And I am covered in shit right now, literally.
Yep.
We then shift over to Chaol's point of view, and he is in a meeting with his dad. Quote, the small breakfast room in his father's suite was sunny and silent, pleasant even, but Chaol remained in the doorway. This is the total opposite of what they're feeling, and I love that this is super intense breakfast and a lot of bad blood that's between them is happening in this like bright sunny room, and it's happening during breakfast, which is the happiest meal of the day. That's not up for debate.
Yeah.
Right? There's no other meal where it's acceptable to drink unlimited, like a bottomless amount. No one says, hey, would you like to go to get
bottomless
lunch? Bottomless dinner. And they might be like, no, but even then it's like, $4 margaritas and you get a bunch. It's not like bottomless. So breakfast is the happiest meal of the day. Come at me, bro. And instead they're having this very intense conversation. And I do want to point out that Chaol is in the threshold. He doesn't want to fully enter. And at the same time, he's going to enter. Like he has to go inside. He is going to pretend to eat this happy breakfast. I really want breakfast now.
I know, I do too. But I've ordered Thai food for dinner. So
oh, nice.
I think what I love about this sunny breakfast room is that it's a harsh reminder that life goes on.
Yeah.
Even when you're experiencing heartbreak, even when you're mourning the loss of a friend, even when you're hurting, life doesn't stop for you or anybody else. And at the same time, I feel like this is a room that symbolizes the comfort that his father enjoys, the power his father enjoys, and a life that Chaol has left behind. And now he's being forced back into it. And he ultimately does enter the room and eat breakfast with his father. I think foreshadows his willingness to bargain with his father later on to get Celaena out of Rifthold. Because there was a moment earlier in this book that Chaol was like, my father never comes here, and I don't know what I would do if he did show up. Good thing I'm never going to have to do that. Never mind. He's
never
here.
Say never.
I also, I didn't point it out a lot, but I do feel like, and maybe I'm making this up, I feel like the sun has been used a lot in the context of Celaena and Chaol together.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because this encounter between Chaol and his father symbolically reminds me of some relationship similarities between Chaol and Celaena. And I'll get into that a little bit.
Interesting that you say that, because we start to kind of get this idea from Chaol that he's realizing that there's other mysteries around Celaena, and the fact that we are getting these more intense inklings is the fact that he's with his father when it's happening. And I'm going to kind of go into this whole, going back to Emily's, the listener's note where, he is someone who is still serving the patriarchy. Well, who did he learn all this from? His father. So it makes sense that he would start getting these hints and hunches about Celaena while in the presence of his father.
Yeah.
Because God forbid a girlie has some secrets.
Not allowed.
No. Quote, and there were other mysteries lurking around her. Mysteries that he'd better start figuring out if he was to stand a chance of surviving her wrath. What his men had reported about the body that had been found in that alley. It's not even to find the truth about her. It's to find out the truth about, so that he can survive her wrath. Why does he feel like he has to survive her wrath? We already know that she's not going to kill him, and maybe he's still worried about that, but she's not the king's champion. She's not serving the patriarchy. She's not serving the king. She's serving her own desires, and, that involves murdering and torturing someone. But it's just, it's all beginning to unravel for me.
It really is. And quite frankly, this is not someone who's in love with someone else. Right? We can't forget the Chaol we met in Throne of Glass always suspected there was some darkness within Celaena and has always been looking for it. And he's forgotten for a moment that there's darkness in Celaena. But the second it rears its head again, it's like nothing between them ever happened.
Yeah.
And I will let you say your next thought before I go into my rant.
It's frustrating. I just saw your, damn, that's a long rant. All right, bring it. Okay. So I always love, I don't know why I wrote that. I love emotional manipulation. His dad is not afraid to emotionally manipulate. And who does he use to emotionally manipulate Chaol? His mother. Quote, his father folded his hands in front of him. After a long silence, he said quietly, your mother misses you. She wants you home. The breath was knocked out of him. It's emotional manipulation, but we already know because of what Chaol's described is that his mother, he views his mother as weak, as very submissive, as very, very passive. And she is what a woman is probably expected to be in this society. And his dad is still able to use that against Chaol.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I have to give kudos to SJM. The manipulation in this scene is just next level. And this is where I think she's hitting her stride in this book. And what it comes down to at the end of the day is knowledge is power. And, I could get into spoilers. I'm not going to, but we don't know yet the extent to which Chaol's father is withholding from Chaol. And using that against Chaol to manipulate him into doing what his father wants. So that's just one thing. If you're first time reading this book, we don't know that yet, but we can see exactly what his father is doing. This weak woman you love but hate to love, misses you, wants you home. You should never have chosen for yourself what you wanted. You should have just complied with me. Now, his father is going to do it again when it comes to the topic of Celaena. He starts the breakfast asking Chaol if he's with anyone, and then later reveals he knows that Chaol has been with Celaena. Quote, there was that gleam in his eyes that told Chaol just how much his father already knew. Now, I'm going to suggest, and bear with me, Celaena in Chaol's mind is equivalent to his father. Because she is not his mother. She is not weak. She is not complacent. She is strong-willed. She's willing to challenge him. And she can be manipulative. And I think that, to your point earlier, Jack, is why he begins to suspect Celaena, or starts saying there's more to this, because he is in front of the man for whom there's always more. For whom there is always knowledge that is being withheld.
Good point. I love it. I love it.
Now, Chaol's father continues to pull every trick possible from the book to manipulate Chaol's emotions, so much so that he even disparages Chaol's honor. Quote, "Do I need to convince you you failed to protect the princess, and that has created the possibility of war? The assassin who was warming your bed now wants nothing more than to spill your innards on the ground. What's left for you here except more shame?"
Literally, that's like what Celaena would say to him if she could, if she was like willing to have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The thing that Chaol keeps remembering is the moment Celaena said, "He will always be my enemy."
Mm-hmm.
Chaol, we know, doesn't think very highly of himself. And we see the verbal abuse. Now, on one hand, we could say SJM's trying to help us have empathy for Chaol and is trying to help us not completely despise him in this moment. And so I do, there are moments where I have to ask myself, he's being put down, he's being doubted. Is he a victim of generational trauma?
Yeah.
And is this trauma something he's using against Celaena? Because that's his only coping mechanism. That's what he's learned. Quote, "And though he didn't wait to hear what his father had to say, Chaol left with a sinking feeling that he'd somehow just stepped right into his father's snare. Chaol does not play games, but his dad does, and Celaena does. And Chaol's just not fit for it. And I think it just continues to solidify in his brain that there is more going on with Celaena."
Yeah. I love it. So, listeners, we are now able to have editors, which has been amazing. But now I'm super aware that the editors are editing this and that some of them might be men. So as I go into this next quote, this next bullet point, sorry, editor. I personally love when men suffer for their women. Quote, "He wouldn't let his servants change the sheets on his bed because they smelled like her, because he wanted to sleep dreaming that she was still lying beside him." I love a heartbroken man. I love a guy who is pining. I love a guy who knows that he's fucked up and yet he is kind of resistant of fucking up, you know what I mean? But what he's missing actually is the feminine, is the sex, is the comfort.
He's sleeping in sheets that have his jizz on it and lady cum. And it's
Okay,
just
like
dirty.
when you say it like that, sometimes, Amy, it's too exhausting to change the sheets right away. Okay, I can't help boys are messy. I'm so sorry to these editors. They now know so much more about us.
I mean, they can always opt out if they need to.
This is the moment where they tap out.
They're like, okay, I can't edit anymore. Okay, take a sip.
Take a sip. Chapter 37 has Celaena deciding to do one of the things that really is the hardest part of losing someone, and that is having to clean out the stuff of someone that you just lost. Unless you're me and you just start pocketing shit before others come in.
I mean, yeah.
It's like
It's
I didn't
allowed.
take anything valuable. I took the everyday things. That was one of the side moment. I was 12, my dad died. Everyone was crying around the room and everything. And my dad's watch that he wore every day, it was not a fancy watch. It was just his everyday watch. It was cracked even. And his driver's license were on the coffee table and everyone's crying. And I just like slowly reach out and take both of them and put them in my pocket.
I know, because I've seen that watch.
I love that watch. I remember that song. So that's like what I do now. And Grandma and Grandpa Grandma and Grandpa had a different method. They gave us
They had a
Post-its.
different method. Yeah.
Yeah. They gave us Post-its and they're like, go forth. We actually had a full table at theirs. I forgot.
At the reception. Here are some plates if you want to take something to remember Grandma by.
We really did have. Did you end up taking anything? No.
I
think you did. My mom was like very insistent that you take something.
I think I did take a plate.
My grandparents loved you.
I know.
All right. So, like I said, this is one of the saddest things, unless you're me and you're deciding to steal shit. But this is sad because Celaena has decided to put away the clothing and just like hide, like not hide, but like pack everything for whoever it was is going to come and take all of Nehemia's clothes. While reflecting on losing Nehemia, though, Celaena destroys / gets rid of her own clothing. Quote, almost as wild as she'd been earlier today, when she walked into her own dressing room and ripped every gown off its hanger, pulled out every pair of shoes, every tunic, every ribbon and cloak, and thrown them into the hallway. She'd burned the dresses that reminded her the most of Nehemia, the dress that she'd worn for their lessons, at their meals, and on their walks around the castle. It is a pure rejection of the feminine. It is purely getting rid of anything that will remind you of that person. It's the rejection of the comfort that she found in Nehemia.
Mhm.
I will say, I would still have like a dress that my grandma bought me, and I will not get rid of that dress. One of the last items that my dad bought me, like clothing, it was like this sweater thing, and I had it forever. And then my luggage was stolen, and that was in there, and that was like the last thing that my dad had bought me.
Mm,
Yeah, I hope that
sucks.
person's happy.
Well, maybe I can make you feel better about this. Um, First off, let's acknowledge the fact that Celaena, multiple times in this book, has had a desire to destroy things that she's bought with the king's money. And it's usually when someone's calling her out for something or when they assume the worst about her, but it's because she's putting up a front, like when everyone thought that she was killing the king's targets.
Mm-hmm.
It's evidence of her self hatred. This time she actually acts on it because she is overcome with self hatred and guilt over Nehemia's death. I feel like the fact that Celaena burns the dresses that remind her of Nehemia possibly is symbolically a funeral pyre to honor Nehemia, because Nehemia was buried while Celaena was in the dungeons. I know we're going to see Celaena at Nehemia's burial site, but fire is also a form of mourning.
Yeah.
The fact that the first dress Celaena burned was the dress she wore the night of Chaol's birthday, the night they first had sex.
Well, that's allowed. That's burn that shit.
Also symbolically part of the mourning of their relationship.
Yep. I'm very pro burning anything that reminds you of the ex. That's fine. That's fine. Like, I even have my jar of like fancy lotion that my uncle got me for Christmas this year, and I used it all, and I don't want to get rid of the jar. I know.
You could just refill it with more lotion.
I'm probably going to like wash it out and use it as like a little jewelry holder.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It's like fancy, cool lotion and stuff. But yeah, I'm a sentimental hoe.
You are.
Unless it comes to an ex-boyfriend. In that case, burn that fucker away. The night, again, one of my proudest moments, the night my ex and I broke up, I put every single thing he bought me and teddy bear and all that stuff over the course of 3 years into a box. And like that night, and then I didn't even go to bed. I was like, remove everything, and then donated it the next day. Be cutthroat, ladies.
Yeah.
Sorry, editor.
We're particularly harsh today.
As Celaena goes through Nehemia's things, it becomes very clear that Nehemia has kept her own secrets once again, and the secrets just keep coming up here. Quote, Nehemia had known Davis, known him, and lied about it. Lied about the riddle, and Nehemia had promised that there would be no more secrets between them. Promised and lied. Promised and deceived her. The part for me is that there's never a moment where Celaena, not that she should stop mourning her friend. I'm not saying that. But there's just not a moment where she thinks like, ooh, maybe
Nehemia's a bad person.
Yeah, or like maybe I didn't know everything about her, and maybe some of her actions hurt me as well, and might have hurt her ultimately in the end. I just wish that there was like a moment there of like, Nehemia, why couldn't you have told me everything? Maybe I could have helped you too. You know?
Yeah. I feel like in this moment, Celaena's almost on her way, but
Mhm.
to thinking that, but I think to do so would cause her to break down, and she's not
Yeah.
ready to do that. And quite frankly, she's not safe enough to do that yet.
Yeah.
We do see more of Celaena reflecting on Nehemia in Heir of Fire. I don't think it's the extent that we want, but it's when she's in a place where she has the space to process, and that space is not here right now.
No, and that's completely and utterly understandable. And, at this point, Celaena goes and was like, "Hey, Nehemia has this riddle that told me I shouldn't look into and said that it was pointless and useless." So she was like, "The fuck?" And Celaena goes down to the tomb and discovers, like, wow, if I use the sword and I look through the special pommel, I get to see a poem.
Woohoo.
Woo! Quote, "The tomb was filled with moonlight, bright enough to see by, and there, directly across the tomb from the eye in the wall, was another eye, golden and gleaming." Again, we have this moonlight. We have the moon just filling this entire tomb. And this is bringing truth and discovery and everything. And there's just not a cloudy night here. It's just a very clear sky. The moon always is bright. I'm just thinking about their weather and that, it's very convenient.
I know. If they never have a new moon, there's never a new energy in
Right?
astrology for them.
Where is the new moon? And with all the moonlight, where's her moon water?
All
Why is she
excellent
not
questions.
charging her crystals? Right?
Yeah.
You got to be on top of this, Celaena. Celaena confronts Mort about knowing the clue. And I think she's taking out her frustration of Nehemia onto Mort. Quote, "Since you clearly knew that the sword could be used to read the riddle," and this is a genuine ask for the listener, because I really would like someone to explain it to me, why Nehemia was dissuading Celaena from finding out about the clue of like partnering with her. Is it meant to be one of those situations where, maybe she had a feeling Celaena wouldn't have acted on things? Because we know Celaena was resistant, and someone might be like, well, if Celaena was more willing to become a rebel, then Nehemia would have showed her everything. However, maybe if Nehemia wanted Celaena to be a part of this journey, you should have let her figure shit out. So
Mhm.
it's one of those, I need someone to explain it to me. Otherwise, it is pure plot device.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't feel like this was handled very well. The only way I can rationalize it is maybe Nehemia wanted to make sure she was present when Celaena found out so she could hold Celaena accountable and to be like,
Maybe.
you can't
Yeah.
back down from this.
I really feel like SJM wrote herself into a corner
Yeah.
and is just kind of basing it of like a go with the vibes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at this point, Celaena asks Mort, quote, "I thought you had powers. You can't just speak some nonsense words and have the meaning of the riddle be revealed to me. Of course not. And isn't the journey more important in the end than the end?" "No," she spat. It feels like a cop-out writing device. It feels very like someone might ask SJM, well, why can't Mort say anything? Why didn't Nehemia say anything? And then
Yeah.
Mort's like, no, it's about the journey. You could have very easily have said something where he was like, I was spelled not to say
Yeah.
anything. Gavin made it so that I can't reveal anything, that only the worthy are able to discover this. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm, mhm.
there's a solve there that she didn't go for. And if I was editing the story, I personally would have pushed this plot avenue, this plot line a lot more to make it make sense for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There is a funny moment between Mort and Celaena that is also important that I just want to call out. Mort asks Celaena, quote, "Has the questing spirit seized you at last?" "Not yet," she said as she walked by. Once she found out what the three items were, then maybe she'd consider finding a way to go after them. So literally, she's lying,
Yeah.
right? Whether or not she thinks it's questing, Celaena is thinking about searching for the three items, which we find out are word stones or word keys. Now, that's personally my definition of questing spirit. She's not willing to admit it yet, at least to Mort, because she in theory, is still resistant to seizing her destiny. That's exactly what Nehemia wanted. And eventually she will come to the conclusion that she will do it because Nehemia wanted it, to do what Nehemia wanted her to do. But she's not ready to be held responsible. She's still grieving, and that mindset is going to follow her into Heir of Fire.
Yeah.
More Heir of Fire setup. And this is so important. And I did just finish listening to Heir of Fire, so I'm just going to read this quote. She found herself wishing that he, Mort, actually could move about. Then she'd at least have one person to discuss this with. If she did have to go hunt these things down, whatever they were, then she'd have no one to go with her. There was no one who knew the truth. This ultimately is why Celaena is going to fall in love with Rowan, because he is going to be the first and maybe only person to know the full truth. She longs for that. Like, Celaena doesn't even think about bringing Chaol and Dorian on this quest.
No.
Because she cannot give them her truth.
No. That's why I feel like people should always give a few people, like, give your full truth to some people. I know that's scary and very vulnerable, but you don't want it to be like, they're the first person I told everything to. That's not a reason to be with someone forever. Like, I'm happy you feel safe with them for the first time, but that doesn't mean that they're the ones to get it right. You know?
Yeah.
Just because you're willing to open up to someone doesn't mean that they know how to take care of that.
That's fair.
People don't get brownie points for you being vulnerable.
Snaps for Jack.
I felt that one in my soul.
Yeah. Take it to heart. Don't forget.
Wait, what? Talking to me.
Yeah. So the next time you're with a guy, he doesn't get points for you being vulnerable.
Okay, that's, I was pointing at the listener. We didn't have to point this around me. No, my thing with guys, I was like also unraveling was they don't get brownie points for being good men.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be better than good.
Yeah. And as we've learned from Chaol, sometimes a good guy still supports the patriarchy.
Sometimes a good guy still fucking supports the patriarchy. You know, one of another rant. Like, a lot of people are getting some fun facts about us today. One of my biggest, like, towards the demise of my last relationship, towards the very end, where there was a moment of like, I truly felt it was the first time I really didn't have respect for him. And it was like it was very much the beginning of the end, and a lot of things were leading up to it. But I wanted to go volunteer at this food on foot place, and it's to help unhoused and underprivileged individuals with food and items and stuff. I like to volunteer there occasionally. It's not like a full soup kitchen, but it's similar vibes, right? You're handing things out. I wanted to go volunteer there. All you have to do is be there by 10 a.m. That's it. And it was too early in the day for him to do it. And that was like a moment where I was just like, you know what? I have zero respect for you for that. So that's like the Chaol thing, where it's like, he was a good guy, but like, what happens when you're requested to do more?
Yeah.
So yeah, people don't get brownie points for things.
Nope.
But meanwhile, someone save that. Someone make it into a beautiful sticker. Amy, turn that into a shirt. They don't get brownie points for you being vulnerable.
Will do.
Celaena, I'm already imagining all the DMs of someone being like, Jack, you spoke into my soul. Celaena is rocked with the news that Nehemia once again lied to Celaena, because the lies just keep adding up. At this point, Mort was like, oh yeah, so Nehemia has been here before.
Yeah.
You brought her down. And she knew the truths about the tunnels. And so Celaena goes and takes a minute on the stairs, and she sits down, takes a breather, and lo and behold, Ghost's great-grandmother shows up, and she visits Celaena and, quote, her dress rustling as she took a seat a few steps up from Celaena. It seemed a distinctly unqueenly-like thing to do. Before social media, the tabloids used to do like, celebrities, they're just like you. And this feels like queens, they're just like you. But it's literally Elena getting on Celaena's level. And I hate this.
But not at first. She's still a few steps up.
She's still a few fucking steps up. I've mentioned before that Elena has always been a mother-like figure. And you can see that with Celaena seeking comfort from her in a way. Quote, She hadn't realized how cold she was until she found herself leaning into Elena's warmth. The queen didn't say anything as Celaena buried her face in her hands and wept at last. It just feels so manipulative and wrong. Elena, you caused this. You are the one who instructed Nehemia to go down to these tunnels to lie to Celaena, to do all this shit. Celaena even makes a comment saying, I thought you were too weak to come over here. We know that's a lie because Elena was paying visits to Nehemia.
Yep.
It's wrong and I don't like it.
I agree.
Celaena goes then to pay her respects to Nehemia, and I feel like the description of this is meant to show that Celaena is on the path that Elena put her on. Quote, there was one last thing she had to do, perhaps the hardest and worst of all the things she had done since Nehemia had died. The moon was overhead, casting the world in silver. It makes sense that she's about to go do a very Fae thing. It goes into her lineage. It goes into who she actually is and who Elena needs her to be. So in this moment, we're seeing Aelin, not Celaena. And because of the fact that everything is in silver, which is very much a description of Elena, it's Celaena following the path that Elena wants her to be on. I hate that they rhyme.
I do too. Obviously intentional, but very annoying. So I have to stop and talk about the way Celaena is dressed when she goes to Nehemia's burial site. Quote, a black dress and a sheer flowing black veil spoke enough about her grief and kept everyone at a long, long distance. For the first time, she is physically embodying the wraith that she's described as. But it's because it's from her point of view, we don't get the word wraith because she's never thought of herself as a wraith. Visually, though, that's what she is.
Yeah.
And I just thought, gave me tingles.
I love it. Good freaking point. We switch over to Chaol's point of view, and he's watching Celaena sing to Nehemia's grave. Quote, she beat her breast in time, so full of savage grace, so at odds with the black gown and veil she wore. Now, I am going to get caught up on the word savage grace. Savage this is also me replaying that song in Pocahontas. They're like, savages, barely even human, right?
Yep.
And so whenever I imagine savages, what I imagine in people using the word savage is a white person describing non-white people.
Yep.
So right now, this is a human person describing a non-human activity, that there is a savageness to it and there is an other factor. The word, yeah. And so it's to the listener's point, to Emily's point, it comes back down to how Chaol is viewing this, where he is viewing it from his own safe, human, patriarchal side of things. And it's like, whoa, she's doing this savage thing that's so in contrast to her refined clothing.
Honestly, he could have replaced the word savage with heathen, and heathen is described as someone of not your faith, someone you see as being of like a faith that is more savage than your own. Same vibes. What she is doing is not acceptable in his society. It does not align with what he thinks of as proper.
Yeah.
And therefore it is despicable.
Yep. And it's just also a nice visual, like as much as we're like, fuck you, Chaol, it's a nice visual. Quote, so Chaol walked away, her lament still echoing through the night around him, carried on the wind like the pealing of distant bells. And I love this description of distant bells because it reminds me of like wedding bells. And that is his dream of them getting married, being left behind at the graveyard because it will never happen.
Love it. Great visual.
Yeah.
Take a sip.
Take a sip.
We are now in chapter 38, and the chapter starts with Celaena trying to play fetch with Fleetfoot, who instead is just waiting for Nehemia because Nehemia was her favorite. The scene is so well written to induce heartbreak. Nehemia's name is never used. It's like Celaena, because it's from her perspective, doesn't have the energy to think about Nehemia. It risks her mental stability. And so therefore she has to compartmentalize. And because of that, she can't think of Nehemia's, or at least Nehemia's name. Quote, Celaena said, she's never coming back. The dog kept waiting. There is something really, really powerful in what isn't said, in what is not written. The lack of information reflects Celaena's inability to process things right now, her disassociation. It's different from the disassociation when she was in assassin mode, but it is a disassociation that I think is normal in grief.
Yeah. And even with the disassociation, there's also a level of acceptance. I feel like there's been a lot of stages of grief at this point, and you can see her in denial, almost in bargaining. You can see her in anger, right? Like she's going through the different stages of grief, and now you have her. And this is not complete acceptance, but it's enough of an acceptance that she's going to be able to start a friendship anew with Dorian. So it's the like she's never coming back. The dog kept waiting. Did you ever watch Babe, the movie with the pig?
Oh, yeah. Actually, Emma and I just watched it a few weeks ago.
Really? That's so random. For whatever reason, it gives me that'll do, pig. That'll do vibes.
Yeah.
So now we're in Dorian's point of view, and Celaena finds him in the library, and they're having a friendly conversation. It's actually funny, too. And Dorian notices something new about her. Quote, she wore a dark blue tunic he never seen before, with golden embroidery that glinted in the dim light. In fact, her whole outfit looked new. Her whole outfit is new, as we know, because she went and destroyed everything. And I think that her being new, right? All of her clothes being new, it's her starting fresh in many ways. And I think that allows her to be in the mindset to start fresh with Dorian.
I love that point. And it's helpful that we're in Dorian's point of view right now. Now, we know that he's had nightmares since the night that Nehemia died because he's like, Celaena touched my neck. I think she wanted to kill me. He doesn't really say that, but we know he's thinking it. Despite that, despite seeing Celaena in the council room with Graves' head, Dorian still manages to be himself. And I think we need to see that as the reader. Quote, no, she said, folding the papers in half. No, there's no book. I just wanted to walk. And he'd just come to a dark corner of the library to read.
Yeah. He's like, bullshit.
It's bullshit. Humor is used in this scene, and it's important. After Celaena has said goodbye to Nehemia, has, done the thing to honor her by singing this traditional song, I think we're starting to see symbolically the first steps of Celaena's movement through the grief process towards acceptance, like you said. Quote, a moment later, when the little librarian came waddling into view and asked if they'd seen a dog, Celaena only shook her head and said that she had heard something from the opposite direction. And then she told him to keep his voice down because it was a library. I love that this is indirect dialogue. It's all in the exposition. It's because neither Celaena nor Dorian are really fully ready to accept normal life because laughing, making fun of things, that's being normal. And does that dishonor the dead? But for us as the readers, it signals Celaena coming back to herself now that she's had the ability to mourn. We get to see the narrative kind of shift back to what we see as normal.
Yeah, I will say, having done both, like my dad's death, like everyone was so distraught. It was just really quiet and no one really did anything. And it took like a year before we could laugh without guilt. Versus like when my grandparents died, everyone was able to, like, we knew it was coming. So I'm thinking about another shocking, like you just weren't expecting a death. When my uncle died, tragic. We were all sitting down and crying, but God, we had joke. Like we were able, because we were at the family and you're able to laugh. And there's just like, this is just me saying that if anyone loses anyone, I cannot encourage you enough to like laugh as much as possible, even in the immediate aftermath. It makes life so much easier. And then it makes moments like these not as jarring, where you're like, oh, I laughed, it's fine, talk about funny stories, have the darkest sense of humor you possibly can.
Yeah, I think it helps with the grieving process. And I think, you know, I don't think, well, except I can't say for everybody, but most of our family wouldn't want us to be sad. Like they
No.
just want us to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. When Celaena apologizes for her behavior for not being like herself, which is like such a nice way of saying, hey, sorry that I stroked your throat in the most threatening way possible.
Hmm.
Dorian thinks, quote, or she'd just been a part of herself that she usually kept on a tight, tight leash, he thought. So Dorian, I think, for the first time, really understands Celaena and understands just how dangerous everything is and that there is a lot more to her. And while Chaol takes this as like I got to figure out more so that I can get ahead of her so that she doesn't take that out on me, Dorian almost respects the leashed individual. However, have to point out, leashed animals, comparing her to an animal.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he is comparing her to an animal who has to be contained or detained because that's how Dorian feels about himself, right? He's
Yeah.
able to have sympathy for Celaena because he is, for the first time, experiencing something he cannot control within his own body that he has to keep leashed and that he views as dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, there's the implied power dynamics, the implied you can't be who all the facets of who you are. You need to keep it under control. But what I love about this is unlike Chaol, Dorian is finally able to really see Celaena.
Yeah.
He's seeing a new side of Celaena that he's not
Agreed.
acknowledged up until this point.
It's almost like, yes, there's the animal, yes, there's the leash, but there's something more pure to this than that.
Right, right. And he says, I understand. Quote,
Yeah.
and from the way her eyes softened, he knew that was all he ever needed to say. All Celaena wants is someone who sees her and accepts her. And in this small moment, Dorian has achieved it. It's so sad that Chaol could not do her the same courtesy.
Chaol is now invested in finding out more about Celaena. And honestly, the motivation is very questionable, as we already said before. Quote, she was hiding something, a secret she kept locked up so tight that only the horror and shattering loss of that night could have made her slip in such a way. So the more he could discover about her, the better chance he stood of being prepared when the secret came to light. This is the second time that he is like thinking, I need to get ready. I need to get ready for her. And it just makes me think about Emily's, note talking about how he only likes her in certain regards and that this is not upholding the system that he has benefited and supported.
Well, the night that they dance, he also knew Celaena was going to be in a mood and he wanted to get ahead of it by putting her on guard duty, by putting her outside. So he's always acted this way.
Yeah.
But it was okay when he could still control her. And
Yes.
he was okay being with her because he could still control her. He is now on the defensive because he can no longer control her.
Absolutely. The librarian gives Chaol a big old clue, but more importantly, gives the reader a big clue. Quote, they were taught, and this, so the librarian was like, oh, actually, the Fae were thinking used to have some traditions like this, secrets.
Only
quote,
the nobility knew.
Only the nobility, but he does say Fae at one point.
Does.
But like at this point, it's only the nobility. Quote, they were taught and sung in secret, their dead buried by the light of the moon, when no other ear could hear them. With all of the moments of moonlight and with everything that's been happening these last couple chapters, I think it's not just a clue about her being like Fae, like this is the moonlight has been foreshadowing. So, and then you can almost say everything leading up to this, what could you look at it as her being Fae in many ways, right? Like, was like her hunting Grave, was that very Fae of her? Her pulling out Gavin's sword, very Fae. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that you could say Fae equals moonlight.
Yeah. And I mean, does she feel an entitlement to Gavin's sword because she is also in some ways a descendant?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think she's a descendant of Elena. She's probably a descendant of
No, she's a
Brannon.
Well, Elena's a descendant of Brannon.
I don't know. It could have, whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
They're related a little bit.
They're related somehow.
Yeah.
So maybe she feels entitled
Yeah.
to Damaris. I don't know.
Okay, so the last quote I want to reference before Amy gets to her last point is this quote: "If Celaena ever took up the mantle she lost, if Terrasen ever got to its feet, then Celaena could become a powerhouse, potentially capable of standing against Adarlan, and that made Celaena more than just his enemy. It made her the greatest threat he'd ever encountered." Never has a listener email been more poignant than this moment. Like, I was just everything that she said, right? Of how Celaena represents not the status quo for him.
Mm-hmm.
That she represents a system that is not his safety and does not provide the best for him.
He doesn't go searching for that because she's always been this, right?
Yeah.
And the information was always there for him to find. He's never really gone looking for it. And the reason for that is because, well, Celaena was quote unquote in love with Dorian. So she wasn't really a threat. And then she was in love with Chaol and Chaol was in love with her. So she's not a threat. But the second Celaena put her hands on Dorian's neck, the night that Nehemia died, Celaena has become a threat. They have gone back to being the prisoner and the guard in Endovier, right? He's the captain of the guard who escorted her back from Endovier. There is no trust. Has Chaol even talked to Dorian about how he feels?
Yeah.
Not that we know of.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, Dorian was scared. He's had nightmares. But we've also seen how he's still capable of seeing Celaena as human, at least partly. Whereas in Chaol's mind, she is essentially only predator. She is only threat. Mm-hmm. He's never let his guard down around her. Ultimately, he's always known she's a threat. Now it's just confirmed.
To use the lens that Emily provided us, you could also say that the moment that Celaena put her hands on Dorian's neck, who is a literal representation of the patriarchy,
of the power
of the system, is when she went against Chaol.
Yep. And then Chaol turned against her.
Yep. Let's go into Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks.
In chapter 35, as Celaena goes to the tomb to get weapons, Mort says to her, "I'm sorry about your friend," he said with surprising sorrow as she stalked toward him. She didn't reply, and she didn't care how he knew, probably because Elena and Nehemia were talking about it.
Yeah. In chapter 36, while in the council room when Celaena walks in with Graves' head, Dorian is worried about Chaol and Celaena fighting and his magic being provoked. Quote, "He was sitting beside the person who would give the order to have put him down." Just, just some great foreshadowing to the end of Heir of Fire right there.
When Celaena goes to see Archer, she warns him he has 5 days to leave Rifthold. Quote, "If you aren't prepared to leave Rifthold, then I won't bother faking your death. I will kill you before you know I'm in the room." This is the second time she's threatened to kill Archer, and it's just more foreshadowing.
Third time's the charm.
Mm-hmm.
In chapter 37, Celaena singing her funeral song for Nehemia, quote, "The language was ancient, each word full of power and rage and agony. She beat her breast in time, so full of savage grace, so at odds with the black gown and veil she wore. The hair on the back of his neck stood as the lament poured from her mouth, unearthly and foreign, the song of grief so old that it predated the stone castle itself." I mean, how does that sound when you're like, that's, it's more Fey heritage, breadcrumbs, but it's also like, wow.
It also sounds like the white colonizer hating on what is traditional for the native people of the land.
Yep.
And lastly, in chapter 38, the librarian tells Chaol, quote, "There are feral beasts running amok in my library."
Amok. Oh, yeah, it's the monster.
There's a monster, not just a dog.
Yeah. All right. So we asked our listeners Is a Celaena killing Grave the first immoral thing that she did? I would like to note, in many other questions we've had answers out of the wazoo. We have had very little answers on this one, and I'm not shaming you guys, but maybe I am. No, this is not what I'm saying is this is not an easy question.
Yeah, this is not an easy question.
Because the follow-up was, if this is not the first immoral act she's done, then what is?
Hannah says it depends on what you consider immoral. She has killed plenty before. Was killing her overseer in Endovier immoral? She needed someone to blame for Nehemia, and since she can't do anything more to Chaol, she finds someone to blame. She does end up being wrong, which some may say makes it immoral. But you can argue Grave isn't great either. So is it okay? Honestly, it wasn't good for her to do because she just found someone to blame without knowing the full truth, though it's deeper than that. But also, he wasn't technically a good person either. To answer the question of what was her first immoral act, we may not know. The first time she killed, it depends on what people consider immoral. Maybe the first time she killed someone who didn't deserve it, but was it Grave?
What is the question of immoral? I think for us, we go back to, is getting revenge immoral? I mean, maybe in today's society, it's not smiled upon. However, she didn't get revenge only, she tortured him as well. So just keep that in mind. So everyone here a lot of people said similar things was, I don't think killing Grave was immoral. Grave was immoral himself. Which again, it's very eye for an eye. And it's like, that doesn't mean that that's not immoral.
Yeah.
Some people say dating Chaol was the first immoral thing. Someone says, no, throwing the knife at Lysandra was crime against women. I love it.
Oh, that's a good point. I forgot that happens.
I'm not sure, but it does show her lack of impulse control. That is absolutely.
Yeah.
No, she has a long history as an assassin. But that's also fair. However, she was a minor the whole time. So can a minor be accountable for immoral actions when she's being forced to do those?
Right.
That's another thing. It's like she was not forced to kill Grave here.
Right. I mean, in theory, all of her kills while she was an assassin working for Urban Hummel was a means of survival. It was purely the only way that she knew how to be alive in the world.
Yeah. I have a couple more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it immoral? Truly immoral to kill a sadist, torture, murder? Just because someone deserves it doesn't mean that torturing them. It's not like she did a quiet kill. She tortured him back. I'm not saying that they don't deserve it. If you put someone who hurt kids in front of me, but again, I'm not saying that what I would do is morally right. Someone says like she was going to get revenge for Sam like this, but she got it for Nehemia instead. Doesn't mean that it's not immoral. It's the first time she's met the job description.
Oh.
Savage. That was. I felt that one. That one was a good. Woof. That one was hard. Revenge is a human thing. I support women's rights and their wrongs. I definitely support women's rights and their wrongs. Again, is revenge just killing? Is the torture the too far apart?
Yeah.
I think SJM set us up to setting us the writing set us up for us to understand that what she was about to do is a bad thing. Last two comments and then you go on your thing. No, I feel like it's not immoral, even though he didn't kill Nehemia. He was still a killer. I mean, he did kill Nehemia. I mean, she was at Endovier before this. So, okay. So, yeah, I mean, in general, it's a lot of he deserved it. So,
really quick, before we continue the conversation, a trigger warning. I am going to talk about the darker side of humanity, which is pedophilia and molesting of children.
And rape.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a question I think people struggle with in our society too. Do the people who were wronged or related to the people who were wronged get to mete out justice before the justice system? So I think of examples of, a woman who dismembers or castrates her husband because he's been molesting the children, or,
Yeah. That doesn't mean that I don't support it. Like, but
quite
you
frankly,
can't see that it's like, but was that a moral thing to do?
yeah. And that's the conundrum of life.
So I mean, and that is the conundrum of life, right? Is to say who deserves it, who doesn't deserve it. I'll even go to currently, you've heard about the whole alligator Alcatraz that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so they're building a detention center, which got flooded, by the way, because like even Mother Nature was like, the fuck are you doing? So it was like, so, there it's a detention for anyone who doesn't know. It's a detention center that's being built out on a man-made island in the middle of like on the Florida Keys or something like that. But like where a bunch of alligators are surrounding so that if anyone escapes, anyone who has been detained by ICE and being held essentially legally there and tries to escape, they will be eaten by alligators. That is immoral. That is wrong. They are human beings. You cannot do that.
Yeah.
Let's replace that with every single person in there is not like this, not to do with anything illegal, but let's pretend like we do something like this and we do it for pedophiles, rapists, the worst of the worst that I truly disdain. I am not saying that I would not be the first person being like, here, alligator, go get him.
Yeah.
However, I would also have to say that is that moral? Are you putting a stain on yourself?
Yeah.
Just because the answer might potentially be yes, doesn't mean that it's the wrong thing to do,
Yeah. Something that sticks with me is how in prisons, how men treat other men who are known to be pedophiles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't remember, this was the internet before people thought about like filters. But I remember seeing a picture of a man who had been raped by a bunch of other men because he was a pedophile.
Yeah.
And they wanted him to experience what he did to the children and just all the blood. And I'm just like, I don't think you're wrong, but you're wrong.
Yeah. And I
it's
think
hard.
Just the description of what you're saying is horrific, right?
Right.
And, the first half of your sentence was, men who are pedophiles, they're targeted in prison. And immediately I'm like, yes, get them. And then you made that description and it humanized them. And it's like, this is a horrible human being. We should not have pedophiles and rapists and these horrible individuals out in the world. It also feels wrong of what we're seeing. And that, I think, is what SJM was trying to do, is make us feel like, okay, I get what you're doing. Grave is a piece of shit. He is the worst. However, this doesn't feel cozy.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not like you're hitting rock bottom.
Yeah. And again, like this isn't put someone in front of me tied up who's done a bad thing and give me a knife and who knows what I would do. You know what I mean? Like this is not any form of superiority. I think that just the way that SJM wrote it set us up to feel that conflict because it did set it up in a way for Celaena to be so detached and covered in darkness.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, but there's a different question that we're here to address.
Yeah, we still have another question to answer.
Woo.
Are Celaena's actions in these chapters the stages of grief playing out? If so, are they bringing her closer toward acceptance?
Yeah. It's anything that brings you out of the state of comatose is bringing you closer to acceptance. The second you leave your room and you're willing to stand up and you're willing to get dressed and you're willing to meet the next day, because remember, before this episode, in last week's episode, it ended with her just essentially sitting in the same bed over and over and over again and just replaying the same day in her head what's going on. You are not going forward in grief. Whether you're murdering the murderer or you're, doing other things or singing or cleaning out or something, if you're doing something and you're living your life, even if you're going to the library and having a conversation with your friend where you're laughing, those are stages that's bringing you closer to acceptance. And one thing that I want to really emphasize, and I say this having gone through death and grief in many different ways, so this kind of feels like a life lesson to everyone. One, there is no acceptance. There is rebuilding your life. There is no finally I'm okay. Your world and your reality has been absolutely shattered. You are now building the new reality. And that's what that is. When my dad died, it was particularly devastating to my family. And not that these other ones haven't been devastating, but it was, I was 12. My mom didn't know what she was doing. And there was a true comatose situation. And that delayed the grieving process for a very long time. It was very stagnant. It was rinse and repeat in the same grief. Anything that you're doing to rebuild the new reality is in the right direction.
I think that's an important lesson for people to know that maybe haven't gone through that yet in their life. I, for one, have not, and I don't look forward to that day. I will say, based on what you're saying, acceptance feels like a misnomer. It feels like
Mhm.
the wrong word choice for this, right? What it's implying is you accept that your life will no longer be the same.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's not what people think of when they
When they think
think of
acceptance.
acceptance. Exactly. And so I like the idea of rebuilding. I feel like that's a better word choice. I think, yes, these are Celaena's actions of grief. And I think that honestly, in some ways, the guilt she's going to feel is going to prolong
Yeah.
the stage of grief, right? Um, she's going to have survivor's guilt, if that's even the right word for it.
Yeah.
She's going to feel different levels of guilt about different things. And I think that that is going to cause some stagnation, even though she's maybe no longer comatose. But to your point, it is going to put her on a path toward rebuilding her life.
In the writing point of view, I want to applaud SJM because we covered 4 chapters today. Nehemia died, I think last episode it was like a couple chapters. So let's call it 6 chapters, 6 to 7 chapters of her death to acceptance. This is not a giant book. This is not a particularly large book. This is
Right.
not the biggest book in the series by far. I worry for Heir of Fire. We haven't even discussed what are we doing 10 episodes? Are we doing 12? What are we doing? So this is not a particularly large book. With a limited amount of time and space, SJM took us through Celaena's grieving process while still making it obvious that she's not done. It's not like we've reached the end of chapter 38 and suddenly she's like, wow,
The book's
I have
over.
clarity now. Yeah, like I have acceptance. And I think that from a writing perspective, this was a very chef's kiss moment of having us be with the heroine and going through this journey with her and coming out to another side, because now the next steps would not make sense if she hadn't gone through all this. If she had just woken up one day and was like, all right, time for my side quest. I still have issues with this quest thing and more like wanting to, add more oomph there. However, I think SJM set this up very well for the next stage of this book.
I think that's a great point.
Thank you. So are we just ending the episode on my great point? We can.
I think so. I have nothing to add.
All right, let's ride this high.
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy. Next week, we will be exploring chapters 39 through 43 of Crown of Midnight.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would also love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or on a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle BookTalk for Book Talk.
Bye.